Okay, I hate YouTube intros, so I'm not gonna do one. Um, I am Cairo Croon though. I wanted to do like a interview type of thing for the album. Due to some things that I'll discuss later on in this video, I have not been able to get in contact with like journalists and stuff like that, whatever, to be able to do the interview. So I thought, well, I can just do the interview myself. I have a journalism background, so I know how to create questions for myself. So it's slightly double minded, I guess. Um, but the album turns a year old today, like at the time of releasing this. My album Sunphase 97. And to be honest, I'm really proud of the work, right? And I really would love the opportunity to be able to explain why I think that the project is dope. Um, so I've like constructed some questions that if I was a journalist, I would ask myself as Cairo Croon, the artiste, right? Um, and then after I get through the questions, I want to do like brief, I don't know if they're going to be brief, do breakdowns of the songs. So we'll see how this goes. Um, this first question here is how did the creation of this album start? What was the catalyst? First off, let me say that I had some idea that Sunphase was going to be this. I had some idea that it was going to sound like this. I had some idea of the lyrical content um, before I sat down to make the album. And that's primarily because the way my brain works. When I started making music, I conceptualized my first four albums. Like I was like, okay, I'm making this first one. I know what I want the second one to be about. I know what I want the third one, and I know kinda ish what the fourth one should be about. Right now, some of that stuff you have an idea when you start making the project that then changes like as you're going. But I had the skeleton of Sunface 97 before I was done with Atmosphere. But you don't always know how the album is going to start, how a project is going to start until it does. A friend of mine a couple of years ago had reached out to me asking if I wanted to go see Phoebe Bridgers in concert. And at the time, I had no idea who she was. I was like, oh, white girl, I'm cool. So the concert came and went. And then afterwards, I was like, oh, I should listen to this and see what this music sounds like. So I listened to her album, Punisher. And the first real track on the album is Garden Song. And that song destroyed me. Lyrically, I had never heard anything that was that direct and that honest before. And sonically, I was like, God, this sounds so suburban to me. It's so reminiscent of my youth in a lot of different ways. Sorry, my cat will be interrupting these things semi frequently. Say hi, Iris. Anyways, um, I heard Garden Song and was like demolished. And I was listening to it and I was like, this is what my album is going to sound like. I said, this album of mine needs to make me feel the same way that this Phoebe Bridgers joint does. So, really, once that started, I was able to move forward, I would say pretty confidently, because I had some modicum of an idea of what the album should sound like. The first song, though, which is interesting because it ends up being the last on the album itself, um, that I came up with was Cedar Hill. And it was, again, because I was trying so hard to be like, oh, I wonder what a Phoebe Bridgers song would sound like if I did it, right? And so I found the guitar loop first, um, and I think I added a couple of synths. I went through the creation of the song. Really, when Cedar Hill got made, um, and certainly by the time I had released it, I was like, yeah, I have an album now that I'm going to be making. And I would also say that once we got Cedar Hill, I started also being able to conceptualize. This is how my brain works. I think I was pretty immediately like, Cedar Hill is the last song. As soon as it was made, I was like, this sounds like the end of a coming of age film that takes place in the suburbs. It's like the final scene, like they're riding their bikes off into the sunset, and you see their images like kind of fade off, and it's like a little narration on the screen, text narration on the screen, these things. I was like, cool, let's go. On this album, you took on the bulk of the production, 8 out of the 9 songs. Why was self-producing important? What challenges did it present? I wish I could say that it was an intentional decision for me to have produced all of this, at least not at the beginning. That's not true. In my first album, Rorschach, I produced 0 of that. That was all Lake and Sylvander, I'm sorry. And second album was all my Atmosphere. That was all Dupree, except for literally the last song, Other Side. And I'll say that I knew that I wanted to produce more on this album, but I was never trying to make the whole thing or whatever, the majority of it. That was not the intention. It really kind of started because I started doing the Ask XYZ producer if you could make me a song that sounds like this, or hey, do you have any beats? And I got beats from producers that all sounded really, really cool. It kind of got to a point where I was like, have you heard a Cairo Croon song before? It honestly felt like I was getting beats from who wanted me to be Bryson Tiller. Which is just not my bag. And so I was getting frustrated is not really the right word, but I certainly was like, why don't you just make a song that sounds like this? I never sent anybody an email like that. But my idea was like, well, what if I made like a track to send off and be like, oh, well, it could sound a little bit like this. But then I remembered that when we were wrapping up Atmosphere, I had sent Dupree a reference track for Other Side. And I was like, can you produce a song that sounds kind of like this, whatever, with the chord progressions and the beats or the drums, whatever. And he had messaged me back and he was like, I mean, I can, but we can also just use what you've made. And that was really validating for me because I hadn't considered it substantial enough. So I was like, okay. Then I had that in my brain as I was starting the production and the creation of Sunphase 97, is that, oh, I can just kind of make my own shit and see if it works. So once I started rolling though, like once I kind of figured out what to do, I was like, oh, I know exactly what I want the song to sound like. I didn't have to, and I also wasn't having to wait on a beat. I wasn't having to wait on a producer to finish a track, right? That waiting still happened, but now the frustration of the waiting itself has to be on me, right? It can't be, God, I'm waiting on this person to finish this. I'm waiting on this drum loop. I'm waiting on this synth. No, I'm still waiting on these things, but it did feel better being like, the album is taking a while because I am taking a while to make it. So it felt nice to be able to take ownership of the album in that way. The challenges that it presented, was number one, confidence at the beginning. I was like, I'm not sure. But I think larger than that was you kind of get in your brain about like, is this producing? Like, what does it look like for me to produce? Because I had only just been writing the songs. That process actually feels different to me than producing. So it was figuring out my whatever production style, which I just took Lakin's advice. Lakin's advice, it wasn't even advice that she gave me flat out necessarily, but when I was like really starting the production of Sunphase, I had went through some of the little default sounds on Ableton, and I was like, this sounds like Maelstrom, which is off my first album. This sounds like Smoke. This sounds like this. And I was like, hold on, did you just take the default sounds and samples off of Ableton? And she's like, yeah, add a couple things here and there, whatever. But she's like, don't ever feel like you can't use what's being given to you. And I was like, okay. So it's okay. So I start on the Ableton default sounds, and then I'm like, that. If there's default sounds here, why don't I just get beat packs? Because I literally recognize a lot of modern day producing now is, sorry, maybe this is reductive, plug and chug shit. It was kind of like, Quincy Jones said this a couple of years before he passed, like in an interview, whatever. It might have been the same interview he did where he was like, Rush Limbaugh is Miles Davis or whatever he was doing. He was like, oh, all music is 4-bar loops, which he's not incorrect about, and he certainly meant that to be derogatory, and maybe in some capacities it is. But I kind of thought, well, if that is the current musical landscape, I shouldn't have to feel shame about being a new producer and doing what the current girls are doing, right? I kind of thought, well, I can start plugging and chugging now, and then as I go forth through production, as I go forth, not even just production on Sunphase, but as I go through as a writer-producer now, I can tweak the recipe and the formula as needed. But I thought, Rorschach sounds lovely, and Lakin used the bass sounds, which means Lakin was doing a lot of plugging and chugging, a lot of 4-bar loops. I'm like, I can do the exact same shit and make it sound like me. So yeah, once I found the production, like my little groove, and once I let go of certain pride and certain shame about not being able to do certain things, the production not only got easier, it got really, really fun. It got really fun. I was able to, a lot of the emotion that is put forth in the album, I think starts at the production first, and it felt so good to be able to produce something that made me feel a specific kind of way, which then drives the writing forward. This next question says, the writing on this album feels much more direct and personal than previous projects. Why did you make this pivot in your content? How did that change the creation process of the album itself? I think that my writing has always been personal, but has never been direct in this way before. Rorschach, while yes, it was all pulled from personal experiences and personal feelings, I buried all that shit under several layers of metaphor, like on purpose. It was supposed to be kind of dramatic in its telling because of the nature of the album's story itself. And then the same with atmosphere. I'm like trying to write Dante's Inferno as Cairo Croon. And so it was like, well, this kind of demands heavier metaphorical pen, in my opinion. But I honestly think that by the time I started writing Sunphase, especially like Cedar Hill being the first song that I made during all of this, I had to get real. Because there was a lot of shit that I was dealing with leading up to and during the creation of Sunphase. There was some real heavy shit real complicated emotional shit, real deep shit. And I, maybe because of the way I wanted to produce it, maybe because I wanted the production to be more acoustic in nature, I also felt like an acoustic sound lends itself almost naturally to a more direct form of storytelling. So while, yeah, I'm still being cutesy in some of the ways in which I'm writing, like I'm still a songwriter, I very intentionally was like, I'm not going to use metaphor in this. I'm going to just talk about the experience and make it rhyme. And sometimes, no shade, it don't rhyme. There are points where I'm like, oh, they don't rhyme, but I needed to say that, right? I also think whatever, the internet is not my therapist. I think had I not been so direct about the writing, with the writing, in the writing, I wouldn't have been able to process the shit that I'm talking about in the album. So I think it was a kind of spiritual need to approach the writing in the way that I did. This next question is fun. What is the significance of the album cover? First, let me say the album cover and all the single artwork was created by Asia Cohen Davis, who is my niece. She's lovely and she's talented and she's sickening. And she was just like doodling shit. She was just like drawing around. Like she would come over to my mom's house and she'd be drawing shit. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And then I was like, hey, what do you think about, like, if I drew you something, could you make it look cool? And so I literally, it's not an Etch-a-Sketch. It's not an Etch-a-Sketch, but it's and I'll put it on the screen. It's the fucking, like, little kids thing where it's a pen and it's a magnet pen and you kind of move stuff around and it's sandy or something. I don't know, right? And then you that way to delete it. I literally went to the basement, grabbed one of those devices. I drew the world's shittiest rough draft of that album cover design. And I go, hey, do you think you can do this? She was like, yeah. No bullshit. I think she made it in 2 days. I think she sent me one line of drafts where it was like a couple of different me's with the sun behind me, or me facing the sun, depending on how you're looking at it, with the little triangles. And then there were some drafts where it was like a house on fire. There were a couple of first drafts of that. And I sent her some notes. I remember being like, I want the sun to have more texture on it, because I was like looking at close up pictures of the sun, like that scientists be taking. And I was like, it needs more texture. And then when I gave her that note, she was like, oh, you mean like this? And then it's just the album cover. She's ridiculously talented. Like, it's kind of insane. So that happened. Paid her for it because duh, right? She's making the artwork for me. And then it became kind of interesting because I'm like, this Asia is a family member of mine. And I know the content of this album is going to be familial in nature. So I was like, that's an interesting kind of tie here. So she made the artwork for the album cover, Sunphase 97. She made the cover for Gonna Be Alright. Now she's got some other pieces that she made for the album. I haven't put them out yet because I kind of wanted to be able to show more. Cause she's that, like, that child is insane. She's like 19, about to start acting, and I honestly can see that girl on some fucking Broadway shit sooner than you think. Like, really. So I'm like, oh, I want to show this off, whatever. We got, I want to say 4. We got the album cover. We got, I'm trying to go through the thing in my brain. We got Gonna Be Alright. We got artwork for Me and My Friends, and we got artwork for Soften Up, and we got artwork for Cedar Hill, which ends up becoming the image that I use to show the track list. So we got a couple pieces. They're all solar in nature, and the concept behind it is that shadows and light have to coexist. They're like codependent upon one another. Interdependent upon one another is probably a better word for that. The sunlight is bright and it provides life to us and it provides warmth, but not without the cost of shadows. So I found this idea that like the light that we contain and the light that we put forth into the earth realm, it has to coexist with the darkness and with the shadow, which is to say that the significance of the album cover for me is that I do not get to have all of these deeply positive relationships with the people around me if I don't experience darkness. It's kind of just part of the gambit. The sound of the album feels lighter than previous projects, using acoustic guitar loops and bright synths. Kind of spoke about this. Your work has been much darker in the past. What led you to this shift? Me feeling better about life, to be honest with you. I think there have always been moments in my music where there is brightness. Like you can go to every single album and find those bright moments, but I think if we want to call it percentage of light to dark was more heavily skewed towards the dark, and towards the anguish and the sadness and the hurt. But to be honest, once I kind of processed all of that stuff, I was able to look around and be like, I have been blessed with so much beauty. So much. Like the people in my life and the life that I'm actually living and the life that to some degree I have created for myself, but also the path that has been laid before me. I'm like, no, I want to show gratitude. And I needed also music that reflected that reflected gratitude, that reflected sunlight and the whatever light that I feel not only inside myself, but that I feel is being put forth by my loved ones in really complicated ways, right? Because they can't put forth the light and the shadow without one another. So the sounds on the album are lighter because I feel lighter as a person. My spirit feels lighter. Life is complicated right now and like f***ed up. But dog, for me to go from the intro of Rorschach being like death, despondence, and darkness to literally opening up Sun Phase 97 basically with me opening the blinds as the sunlight beams through my bedroom at 7 o'clock in the morning, I think it shows a lot of it shows me in a different emotional headspace. I'm not gonna say emotional growth. I mean, yeah, that's occurred, but it's also like the music needed to be darker earlier on because I was processing some darker shit. The music needs to be lighter now because I am appreciative more of even the darkness that life is providing. You seem to be wearing a lot of overalls. What's up with that? I will say that conceptually, this album is very much playing with me as an adult thinking about me as a child, like my life as a child. And a lot of pictures of me as a kid growing up in the early 2000s, niggas was wearing striped shirts, niggas was wearing overalls. That's just kind of what it was. And I have really come to enjoy the look of overalls with a striped shirt. At its absolute core, I think the shit looks cool. On a deeper level, I am really playing around with this idea of like living in blissful remembrance of my youth. It is from a creative standpoint, like a thanks, baby Cairo, baby Croony, for existing so that I could exist. And I'm gonna send this back to you in time to be able to, so you can hear the thank you, you know? So there's that. There's also I've been paying attention to Tyler the Creator since I was in high school. That nigga does errors. For sure. Janelle Monáe does errors. These niggas, Beyonce does errors. Ariana Grande does errors. Ultimately, I make pop music. Like, when somebody asks me, oh, what kind of music do you make? I will typically say alt pop. Or pop. I'm like, oh, if I'm making pop music, I'm finna do pop eras. That's just how that's finna work out. If you look at Tyler the Creator shit, which is some fusion of pop and hip hop, you can tell what album it is by what that nigga was wearing. And I think that's really cool. I think that me wearing always a striped shirt or a solid color like pastel or something like that with an overall, I think putting a visual timestamp on this shit and being able to tie the visual language of music videos, concert performances, into the literal language of blissful remembrance of youth and thankful appreciation for the present moment. I'm like, these things are very, very closely linked in my brain. So it's important for me to look like Mario Brothers all the time. This is the last question that I've written down, and then we'll get into the like song breakdown. The album is a year old today. Why do an interview now? Why wait so long on visuals? Okay, so like whatever Sunphase 97 allowed me to process a lot of things that were going on in my life, good, bad, and otherwise. But then also once I released it, I was tired because I had just got finished processing the things that had occurred in my life over the past couple of years, good, bad, and otherwise, right? I was exhausted. I'm not going to give any details about it on here, but everybody who knows me in my personal life, they know that my line of work is taxing. And I was whooped. You guys, like, I was tired. Emotionally and physically and mentally and spiritually. I was f***ing whooped. So I could not muster up the energy for a year to do this. Or reach out to journalists. Another aspect of that is I am an independent artist. And I'm not even the good kind of independent because I don't have a manager. I don't have a managerial figure behind me who can run emails to niggas, who can give me quotes on certain things or give venues quotes on certain things, whatever. I have to do all that stuff myself, and honestly, me, I am an introvert. I get anxiety really easily about these things. then I start to get in my head and be like, maybe nobody will reach back out because maybe the music is not that good. As if it matters what other people think of me or my music if I stand behind it, you know? But no, me knowing that I was going to have to run communication on all of this shit, that's discouraging. Now, this interview could have happened, surely. But then we get to the energy thing. I was fucking tired. Like, life shifted around for me in like 4 or 5 different ways. Like throughout the course of the album. Some of which I'm going to talk about during the song breakdowns. Some of which I have not spoken about publicly yet. Because not entirely ready to do so, right? But niggas were going through real things. Like September 13th this time last year. So I needed to clamp down for a second. And honestly, the other reason why now is because my husband is behind my ear like, hey, you should do a TikTok about the, like, it started off being like, oh, make the little TikToks, whatever, which I find to be not annoying because I'm on TikTok all the time. I find TikToks to be hard for me to make. And to be honest, I get discouraged easily. Like, God, I hate having to say this because then I have to admit that I'm a fucking Gen Z baby. If I post something and it doesn't get views, I am discouraged from wanting to post more. I kind of feel like nobody's watching this, so it's not like I'm promoting it to anybody, right? Now, I have that in my brain, knowing that my favorite musicians and artists are like, fuck that. Just post your own things because you're proud of them, right? So it's that struggle. And I was, the negative part of my mind was losing that battle up until a couple of weeks ago. And then my husband was like, just start. Like, just start posting shit. And part of the reason why the interview is happening this way is because I kind of figured out I don't like the direct from me to TikTok to consumer thing. I haven't quite figured out how to make that look cool. I'm like, I'm a YouTube baby. Vlog era YouTube baby. I don't know why I can't just cut on a webcam, the quality of which I have always found to be visually quite interesting because it's grainy. I'm like, I can sit up here right now and just do this. It's like not that big of a deal. And I have a journalistic mindset because I have a journalism degree. And so I'm like, I could just do this now. This could have happened at any point, but it's happening now because it was supposed to happen now. Is kind of how I feel about that. And ultimately, I think that me now, like, I can feel that I'm ready to start rolling this stuff out, which is why I put out 2 music videos within like a week and a half, 2 weeks of each other, because I'm like, let's just go. I have these ideas. Oh, another thing I would say too is like, this is weird, and I didn't think about this until literally today. I don't be necessarily thinking about music videos while I'm making the album. I am trying to create visuals within the lyrical content and create visuals within the sound of the production, because that's how my brain works. Is I'm not synesthetic, and I'm not convinced that a lot of you girls are, but I certainly will make a song because there's a certain image in my head that I need to express auditorily. So for me, that's different than the music video visual. Like, I was not thinking about the music video for Gonna Be Alright as I was making Gonna Be Alright. I was not thinking about it at all. The only visual, which hasn't been made yet, that I have always kind of had an idea of is Cedar Hill. But maybe that's because Cedar Hill is written very, very specifically to be a fucking coming-of-age film soundtrack ender. The visuals weren't going to come until after the album came out anyway, because I don't have time to think about that shit when I'm fucking making things. So, okay. I want to do like a song breakdown of each track. I'm not. I don't think they're all going to follow the same format because I don't want this to be boring. And there are also things that I'm more interested in telling you about certain songs than others. Um, so first off, too, before we get into the track breakdown thing, I want to give a huge shout out to Alex Velty. Huge, humongous shout out to Alex Velty, who mixed and mastered the entire album. And this is crazy. He approached me first, which is insane. Literally, as a fan, reached out and was like, "Oh, I really like Sin City," and I was like, "Oh, that's crazy. Check out his Instagram page. The nigga is talented." So then, like, we started having conversations about production for a second at the beginning, and he was like, "I mix and master stuff." And I was like, word, because I don't. I don't know how to do those things. Any album and every album is only as good as its mixing and mastering. And Sunphase 97 is my magnum opus. And so I owe a lot of that to Alex Velty's engineering skills there. Shouts out to Alex. Okay. Hello. I told you. Eventually, she was bound to do this. Get away now. No. So the first track is Cloud Away, which this song was not made first. This song wasn't even made second. This song was not part of the first batch of 4 songs that we got done for the album. This came later. This came like a smooth year and a half into the album making process. I didn't start writing Cloud Away until June 16th, 2023. So I had already had 4 or 5 songs done. I knew that I needed an opener, and I knew that I had not made it yet. And I knew what I wanted the song to sound like a little and be about a little. The way I conceptualized making a lot of these records is I was literally thinking about different times during the day and how those different times made me feel, what those different times of day made me think about. So I knew, well, the first song on the album needs to sound like the morning. It needs to sound like 6:30, 7 o'clock a.m. in the summertime. It needs to feel like the sun has risen or is rising as I'm getting up. Because it's not just like daytime routine shit. It's also literally how I engage with the world at certain times. Morning is my shit. The morning is my shit. I'm always and have always been the first person who wakes up in any household. And it allows me my time to and by myself. I really do make tea every day. I really do make eggs every day. That's really my steez. It just allows me time. And so I knew that I wanted to make a song that sounded like that sounded like the peace that the morning brings. God, this is so cheesy. And so yeah, I was like combing through synth sounds, whatever, and found one, and I was like, well, there's the first song. It started with the synth sound. I think I added some keypads onto it, whatever. The only actual like pressing of the MIDI keyboard I added a bass line when the second verse comes in. Do 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 that shit. And then Also the arpeggiated, like, I think they're like synths at the also who come in the second verse that also sound like the chirping of birds because of the tone of them, but also because they're arpeggiated. Um, and then yeah, once I had the synth though and the drum loop, I wrote the whole thing. Now there was some weird confusion, like because I wrote the first verse, and the whatever hook and chorus, if that's what those parts of the song are, and then I stopped, and I had a choice to make because I didn't know what I was gonna do. There was something in me that also felt like that song could have gone right before Cedar Hill. And I was like, this song is either sunset or sunrise, but you have to keep in mind that when I started making the song, I was like, this is the sunrise song. This is track one. But then when I got to the end of the hook and chorus, I was like, wait, if this is it, I have to make a decision about, okay, where does this go? But then if it's not, I had that second verse that I knew I could write. And the second verse is where it gets kind of like crazy. So I had played it for somebody a couple of years ago. Me and this girl were friends at the time. I had played it for her, and I asked her, like, where do you think this should go? Do you think this should go at the end, or do you think it should go at the beginning? So she listened to it, I think once, twice. We were in the park. She was like, oh, it should go at the beginning. And I was like, word. And then as soon as I got home, I wrote the second, because I already knew. I wrote the second verse, and then I added the bass line and the arpeggiated synths, and then the song was done. Cloud Away is I'm going to say this about every song on this album. Cloud Away is my favorite song I've ever made. It's so pretty. And I added the sound of literal mourning doves in the beat. So it's like, I'll be whistling the melodies the mourning doves have made. Meanwhile, there are mourning doves chirping throughout the track. And then also, I use the I'm so dope. I use the arpeggiated synths to imitate the sound of birds in the morning. Gag. Also, top 3 strongest written Cairo Croon tracks ever. The first verse literally being a poetic retelling of my literal morning routine, and then being like, if you need me, I'm in your most complicated memories. I'm in the memories that your heartache can't erase. Oh my God! Songwriting Hall of Fame. That's sickening to me. And then the second verse, it has the same notes in the melody. I'm singing it differently, and the rhythm and the flow of it are different. That, like, here's what I've been through, and I'm still here making this album. I'm still able to tell you that I survived it. And if I survive my shit, and I don't even go through anything like that crazy for real, you can too. I started to think about One Direction. That whack ass, this would make you beautiful. That pandering ass shit they do. And a lot of those like top 40s pop songs that were really, really everywhere between like 2009 and 2015. I think that shit is whack and corny, but I also was like, oh, what if I made my own version of that? Then it wouldn't be so corny anymore. So it is one of my most beautifully written songs. And God, if you go outside at 7 o'clock in the literal morning and put that shit on and the sun is out, you feel as though you grow wings. It's fucking incredible. And I am tooting my own horn. I don't give a shit. I'm proud of this. I'm so proud of the way that this album sounds and the way that it's come out and the way that it's been received and the way that it made me feel, still makes me feel. You're out of your fucking ducket. I'm bigging me up today, girls. Sun Phase is dope. Inside is the only song on the album that I did not produce. This is Alex Velty, and this was part of the first batch of songs. I think we got Cedar Hill, and then I think we got Inside right after. It's like right in there. Which means I started writing Inside 22-ish, probably fall of 22. And you guys don't know this, but like, I be pulling from a lot of different places when it comes to melody. I know I don't write the most complicated songs melodically speaking, but I be pulling certain references. The shit right before the verse ends. So I'ma stay inside. So I'ma just stay inside. Is Fred Hammond. You are the living word, say, bread of heaven, send down from that. I was like, that's so pretty. I want to sing like that. Gospel in a song about me staying in a house and smoking weed. It's like, what? I love the production on this. This is a shout out to Alex. It reminded me so much of Sierra Leone by Frank. And whatever, I'm gonna address this now. Like, I get this compliment freak. It's gonna sound like I'm tooting my own horn. I swear to God, I'm not, because I don't actually agree with the compliment. I get so frequently from people, this sounds so much like Frank Ocean. Let me say first and foremost, that is the highest compliment you could ever give me in knowing me. Is the song that you made sounds like Frank Ocean. You don't know what that does to my brain, you guys. It means a lot. Because Frank is my father. Like, constructed everything I know and believe about myself as an artist. Because of that, and because his music has had such a profound effect on me, when people tell me that they think that my music reminds them of Frank, I'm like, oh my God. Now, I don't agree with it, primarily because I don't make music as good as that man. I do not sing as well as Frank Ocean. I do not produce as well as the people who are in Frank's team. I do not vocally engineer things. I'm not writing like him, like, not as well. This is me trying to be like, I don't deserve that yet. I appreciate it, and I also hear it. I hear what people are talking about, because the other thing is too, right? Like, you can't help it. If you have an influence that you're really taking seriously, if you have someone who impacts your life who you're really actually trying to listen to and study from, you cannot help but also sound like them. So that it don't gag me at all that people are saying that, but I'm always like, oh my God, don't deserve it, but I appreciate it. But yeah, Inside, from a production standpoint, is gorgeous. It's the only little rapping that I do on the project, and I really this was in the beat already. Like, I don't even think I told Alex to do anything. It just sounded like this when it came with it. The ending after the falsetto note, where I'm coming in rapping with the deep voice, that production made me do that. I was like, keep 6 feet. Like, I was like trying to be ASAP Rocky with the raps. And that's all because of the production, right? Gorgeous, gorgeous track. So now we get into the weeds. I hope I don't get a phone call about any of this. So track 3 is David. And that song is about my relationship with my father. Hi, Dad. I'm gonna be honest, and I'm gonna say that I carried a lot of vitriol and bitterness in my spirit and in my heart towards my father for a very long time. I felt at the time that I was entirely justified. Not to say that I have completely turned the corner on that idea, because there's still some things that I'm like, ooh. I also think that my dad did the best that he could, genuinely. And no shade, and I was literally just talking to my brother about this like a little while ago. The version of my dad that I have now, love him down. Needed him badly as a teenager. I love him so much right now. That's my home dog, for real. But I needed a way to reconcile that. Like, I needed a way to reconcile the complexity of, like, my dad was not always sufficient to me as a youth. But he was working on limited resources and experience. And also, he's doing an okay job now. Like, he's doing all right, despite some of the things, right? I'm not finna give no lyrical breakdown on that because, again, I don't want a phone call. I don't want a phone call. I also, on some real, and this is related to this and fucking Song About You, I don't be sending niggas songs that I write about them if they're like not hunky dory, not on some fake shit, whatever. But if I'm gonna send you the song, we have to talk about it first. And to talk about it, we have to talk about what led me to making the song, right? And I'm like, there are certain conversations that I haven't had with certain folks that are because of those things, and because I want to respect these people's like privacies, and also because I don't want to be disrespectful and say something bad on this camera that then I have to answer for to you later, because we could have just talked about it directly, right? Because these conversations haven't been had, I'm like, I'm gonna watch my mouth on some of these things. I had to try to reconcile the complexities of, I watched my dad do some real stupid shit and drop the ball on a lot of things that I felt like could have been handled better. But I'm also overwhelmingly grateful to A, still have my dad in my life, B, have seen him grow emotionally. What? The second verse of David being like, who is this stranger, but from both ends of the spectrum? Who is this stranger who would be this kind to me that I didn't recognize as a child, couldn't recognize as a child? But also, who is this stranger who's making all of these decisions that I don't agree with, that I don't really feel like is matching up with who I know you to be now, you know? How do you reconcile that? You get David. And I'll say production-wise, so one of my, this is a deep cut, Cairo Croon deep cut. One of my favorite artists right now is this guy, Zach Valier, or Zach Valier, I don't know how you say his last name. Who's this white boy from I don't know where, but was also making music a couple of years ago that sounded a lot like Napoleon Dynamite to me, which, whatever, weird reference, but that movie was incredibly impactful for me. I grew up on Napoleon Dynamite and The Goonies. I haven't watched them, but I grew up around people who was watching Juno all the time and who was watching Superbad all the time, right? I wanted a song that sounds like that a little bit sonically. Like the like whiny bits at the beginning, and when the hook and chorus come back in, I was like, oh, I'm trying to be weird like Zach Valier. From there, I was kind of playing with the like childhood versus right now aspect of things, because there's a bell that kind of dings back and forth with the melody line of the hook and chorus. And also, so we made the song. Alex and I made the song, whatever. Once he was done mixing and mastering it, I just took the file, loaded it into a DJ program, and sped it up 15% to give my vocal cords, the sound of my voice, a more immature sound. I wanted to sound like a younger version of myself. I thought that the play of me writing these lyrics as an adult, sounding younger, singing to my father, is a fascinating and incredibly emotionally complicated idea. That is one of my favorite songs. It continues to be a lot of people's favorite songs. And ultimately, I love my dad, and say that I love him several times on that one song, and say that I'm grateful for the love and affection that my father has been able to show me in my mid to late 20s. Incredibly grateful, and literally would not be here without my father. Song About You is also kind of complicated. I wrote that song about a friend breakup. I will say that the most interesting part, or the most difficult challenge in writing and in creating Song About You, was making it to the point where I did not come at it angry. This song took the longest to make. And I also think it went through the most different versions. The instrumental that's on Song About You is not the instrumental that I started with. The instrumental that I started with is very, very, very different. Much darker in tone. I'm talking about the literal production. Much darker in tone. And I had never sang over a beat like that before. To be honest, it's still on my hard drive. I still want to use it. I could not write to that. So then I was going through other beat packs, and I ended up finding that thing at the beginning. That kind of permeates its way through the song. So it was sonically quite difficult, but it was also lyrically quite difficult, because me and this person were friends when the album started, and then the breakup happened like during the course of the album, which made writing it real complicated. It made writing it real complicated. Because the second verse on Cloud Away does not happen if Song About You does not happen. Also, I'll get to this later. Me and My Friends as a track does not sound like that if Song About You doesn't happen. So like, these things needed to happen when they did, but I will say from a technical and logistical standpoint, that breakup really up the production line of Sunface 97. It made getting through it a toughie. But and it's simple. That was done on purpose. That was done on purpose. I did not want to do a whole lot with the production itself. I was thinking a lot about Justin Timberlake's Cry Me a River, who I think Timberland produced that. I didn't want to be super complicated with the production because I also needed to focus very heavily on the lyrics, right? Because you have to remember, like, I'm processing a breakup as I'm making a song, right? So I was like, I kind of don't need a lot of noise, right? And ultimately, hi baby, my husband just walked in. Ultimately, I didn't want to overcomplicate the situation. Like, I was just kind of like, it happened, I need to write about it. It was also like, no, I actually feel quite simple about this. So I can make a simple beat and can make a simple song and can title it something incredibly simple. I was like, oh, I think I've made a song about you. Like, I think I remember mumbling that to myself as I was like doing the vocals. And then I was like, oh, I just call it a song about you and just keep it, you know? So directness really, it served me well for that song. Gonna Be Alright is track 5. This is a fun record. This is just fun. I was trying so hard to make Pocket Full of Sunshine when I made this. I swear to God, I was like, Pocket Full of Sunshine might be a top 10 song of all time. And she did what I was trying to do on Sunface 97 when I was like 4 years old. I was emulating her real bad. The original instrumental for this, like in Ableton, the Ableton session, is titled Natasha Bedingfield Type Beat. I was biting so hard off of the Sunshine Pop Girlies of 2003. Like, real hard. I will say that lyrically, this song, I think, happened pretty quickly for me. This was first batch. Like, I got Cedar Hill and this kind of done and Inside done kind of in the same span of time. The melody line of the second verse, don't be depressed, don't be that shit. I have audio voice memo recordings of me mumbling that shit in my parents' garage from like 2021. There's just I just had it in my brain. If you look at my notes app or my voice memos, it's crazy. It is a scattering of mumbling in my phone on the voice memo tip and random one-liners for the lyrics in my notes app that then also end up getting transferred over to Google Docs, which never make any sense when I'm making them. they never actually make any sense. But for whatever reason, I can always go back to a voice note or a note that I've left myself, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is what I was trying to do, and like immediately figure the shit out. So Gonna Be Alright was a long time coming. Life was lifing pretty hard for me when I was writing that. I was working a job that I loved doing, but it was also fucking my mental up bad because I don't think that I was doing the best that I could at it, and I didn't think that about myself for years. Like, for years was like, I'm really at this fucking job. Like, I'm really terrible. And shouldn't be here. So I was experiencing a lot of self-doubt then. I was living by myself for the first time ever. And even though like my parents were incredibly supportive, every piece of furniture in this house for the first year and a half was from their house. It's still a lot. Like, I was just adjusting to life. Kind of, figuring out how to pay bills for the first time. So I was like, damn, like, This is a lot, dog. Like, I'm anxious all the time because I gotta pay this, or I gotta take care of this, or man, I have to send this email to the repair. You know, like, it was just a lot of going on. And also, Gonna Be Alright is like, historically takes place around the time all of my life problems start to bubble at the same time. So, like, things with my family were starting to go shifty. Things with my friends were starting to go kind of shifty around this time. And it's just a lot. So I like, though, that the lyrical content of the song, I love songs like this, is different in mood from the sonics, from the production. So it's all this don't be depressed, don't be a mess shit. Get out of your drowning feelings and out of the drowning of life, and you have to start trying to move. With also, like, I thought that was interesting to have those things contrasting. So it was fun. That was a really, really fun one for me to make. The next track is Soften Up. This is a beautiful song to me. I did rewrite this maybe 2 or 3 times because I was like, oh, that's cheesy, or this is hard for me to sing, whatever. But it's a beautiful song. It's a love song that I wrote about my now husband. We were not married when I started writing this, we were not married. We weren't even engaged when I started writing this. We had been together for 4 years at the time, something like that. And legitimately, we were taking out the trash. And there was a way that we interacted with one another, and maybe a way that I responded, that I was like, damn, I have really softened up in my life and in my being and in the ways in which I interact with people, literally because of this motherfucker, right? Like, because I couldn't have been as hard around the edges, as rough around the edges as I was, and continue to be with him. So it was an interesting meditation on, like, how love and this relationship has changed me for the better, in so many beautiful and interesting ways. And too, like, this is how I write love songs. I find that I can never just write a love song that's like, ooh wee, I love you, baby, right? It always has some fucking angle to it, because I feel like if I approach love songs head on, collision course like that, I'm gonna get bored, or it's gonna come off cheesy, like one of the two things. So it's not just a love song, there's a resistance involved. Don't you dare be patient. Don't be the voice of reason. Don't be a source of healing and rest, right? Like, this idea of, no, don't you be good to me. Because if you're good to me, then I have to change my being. Because now I done seen the extent of love itself. That's crazy. I done seen the extent of love itself, and now I don't have a choice but to change, which is uncomfortable. I would rather not have to go through those changes. So stop loving me. Not even in an overwhelming way or like a smothering way. Literally, if you continue to love me as well as you have throughout the course of our relationship, I will be forced to be a better person. And I like the idea of being like, no, I don't want to, right? It's interesting. Love is a beautiful thing. Being in this relationship has changed me, like I said, for the absolute positive, but it's also been fucking crazy, dog. You see another person grow and develop in front of you emotionally, and then you look in the mirror and you're like, oh yeah, I did it too. Wow. You know? Love is beautiful. I just wanted to make a song that made me feel this way. The visual that I had in my brain was Moon River by Frank. And I'm not talking about the song necessarily. I'm literally talking about what it would look like for me to be listening to the song, rowing on a boat with my husband. What would that look like, or what would that sound like, rather? Which is why at the beginning you also hear crickets, because I'm like, I love the like physical texture that these nature sounds provide. The birds in Cloud Away, the crickets here in Soften Up. I'm like, this is very earthy to me. It's incredibly earthy and it's incredibly grounding. And I love the idea that I've added the rain in Song About You and the Thunder. I love that I can blend like synthetic sounds with samples of literal nature. That nature versus machine I'm a big fan. That's sickening to me. So it is fun to kind of do the softness of a synth with the softness of nature itself. Track 7 is Me and My Friends. Now, I told y'all, this went through a shift. The song had a finished version. Like, I was like, oh, this is done. It's fine. But then the events of Soften Up happen, and I'm like, well, it feels weird to keep this lyrical content the same, considering what I just had to go through, right? So I literally, when we talk about the melody lines of the songs, I scrapped that to the ground. The production didn't change. That beat stayed that beat. I wanted a beat that made me feel like I was like, hey, with my friends smoking weed. And I had Mac Miller in my brain and Erykah Badu in my brain when I'm making it. So I'm like, oh, that's smoke weed music. I want to make smoke weed music as well. The lyrical content changed pretty immediately after Song About You got written and made. And then once the lyrical content changed, I was like, oh, the melody lines have to change too. So I literally made a love song to like good friends of mine. The first verse is written by one of my best friends who lives in Baltimore. And that fucking verse is real. We was at Renaissance. We was at Cowboy Carter together, right? And we actually really do have a long distance relationship that has been kept up entirely by technology itself. That is one of my most deeply rooted friendships. I love and adore this person. Ask my husband. I cried when he visited our home. Big tears. I love him bad. That's my baby. The second verse is more broadly about friends that I have been able to keep since high school, or maybe even before then, right? This idea that like I done seen you morph and shift several different ways over the course of our friendship, and you have seen the same transmogrifications as me, or with me rather, and we still are here. That's a beautiful thing to me, to know how often our skin sheds, and for me to still be intact with these people. Like that kind of love is beautiful, because that kind of love is battle tested. My like the friends that I'm referencing on the second verse of that, we really have seen each other in dark times, nig. It has been no joke. There have been times where I have literally thought, these niggas might die, right? But the through line of all of these friendships, these relationships that I have, is what comes up in the pre-hook, which is like, you all keep me grounded, right? Like as the earth sign in the situation, y'all being able to keep my feet in the dirt, which is where they're most comfortable. Which means I have friends around me who, yes, I can trust at a very core level. But it's also like, if I'm fucking up, one of them will be like, Jay, you're fucking this up, right? And trust me enough to be able to be like, oh, word, that's, whatever. So I'm so overwhelmed by the love and affection that my friends have afforded to me. And I'm like, the best that I can actually do is write you some shit. Like, that's the best offering that I can give you, is some shit that will never go away, is this song. Track 8 is called All We Got. Complicated little piece of music that one is. First off, I will say that the Ableton session for that song was originally titled Harry Styles Type Beat. I was imagining what it would sound like if Kanye West had produced As It Was by Harry Styles, which is wild, but that's why it sounds like that. The distorted choir sounds with the drums is some Kanye shit. But also the main synth lead sound in that's Harry Styles down. So I was trying to do a weird emulation mix of the both of them. I don't know why those two came to mind, but I was like, I'm really into this. Now, lyrically, and again, I don't want any phone calls, but I knew when Cedar Hill was made, I knew I was going to have to get around to making this song about my family writ large, okay? And what I'll say is the most interesting things that I find about it, there's a moment in the second, the perspective of the second verse is like, I have all of these things to say about my parents, but people say the same exact things about me. So what does it mean? What does it mean for me to have these qualms with my parents and know that these things have still manifested as personality traits for myself? That was hard for me to come to grips with. That was a difficult thing. And that's also part of maturing is being like, oh, I actually can't keep pointing my finger at my mommy and daddy anymore. That can't keep happening, right? At some point in time, it do have to be about the shit that I'm doing, right? The choices that I'm making, my fucking behavior, right? My mouth. So yeah, I don't want to get into the mess and specifics because they're really not relevant to this conversation vlog. But regardless of the familial complications, I like that you can interpret the lines of, despite all the dysfunction, we seem to work it out. I like that you can interpret that line as me being earnest and me being like, hey, no shade. We come together for Sunday dinner. We come together for major holidays, and we come together when called upon for one another. You can take that earnestly. And I meant it earnestly. You could also take it as a sarcastic kind of a thing of like, I said all that shit in the first verse, said all the shit in the second verse, to then be like, well, family's all we got, you guys, like a damn, like a Family Matters episode. There's a snarky way that you could take that. Now, I do think that's part of the fun of me writing it is there's a little bit of humor in all of my writing, which I think is part of my whatever emotional process for all these things. So it's just an interesting gambit there. Lastly, we get to the crux of the album, which is Cedar Hill, the final song. This was the starting point, but this was a through line for me. Like, I would always return to this track throughout the production process of the album. Alex would text me frequently throughout the process of the album to be like, dog, I'm still listening to Cedar Hill. It continues to be one of my favorite songs. said this about Cloud Away. I'll say it about this one. This is one of my best written songs, and it might be one of my best songs, period. The production is incredibly simple. And again, you have to remember, I'm trying to be Phoebe Bridgers with this shit. I'm like, I don't make it too much. She is nothing if not a minimalist in a lot of these different ways. But also, it's so soft. I had moved out of my parents' house when I was like 24. Which is, I feel like, at least talk about like American culture, niggas are expected to move out by 18. You know, I was there until I was 24. Weird kind of growing pains with that stuff. But realized that after I moved out, I had come back to visit after moving out. And I remember, like, I took a shower where I always took showers. Like, my teens through my mid-20s, I was sleeping in the basement. And so I had my own bathroom down there, whatever. I took a shower in that bathroom. And literally was like, why does the shower rod feel lower to my forehead? I know I haven't gotten any taller. Why does the tub feel more closed in on me? I know I haven't gotten any bigger. Why does the house physically feel smaller? And I go, oh my God, I've outgrown my childhood house. What? From a physical standpoint. I remember an interview that Earl Sweatshirt gave NPR in like 2015 when I Don't Like Shit, I Don't Go Outside came out. And he was like, oh, I outgrew my mom's house. And they were like, what do you mean? And he was like, I mean, I outgrew my house. And it was that for me. This sensation of being like, oh, I physically have outgrown this. Maybe I've outgrown what I needed from this house as well. But also, it wasn't just about an outgrowing. Life in that house changed pretty drastically in the course of me living there. I watched my family shift and melt and break and crack and start to be rebuilt, all while living in that house. My dog died in that house, my nigga. We done seen a lot of things. That house in the fucking suburbs has seen a lot of things. And there have been physical changes themselves to the house since I've grown, right? This one I gush about. I feel like I can talk about a lot of this stuff because I fucking love Cedar Hill. And most of the shit in there, I'm not gonna get no phone call about. It is my perpetual desire to not get a phone call. Please do not call me. I wanted to write about what that felt like to go back to your mom's house, your childhood house, and be like, not only does it physically feel smaller, emotionally, I've outgrown this. Right? But then also thinking about the ways in which my life was complicated, our lives as a family were complicated back when we were all in the house, when it was less of us in the house, when it was just me and my mom in the house. How life kind of shifted around when those things are going on. And thinking about this childhood version of myself, right? Jay with the fucking striped shirt on and the overalls. Being like, yo, these were some of the best times of my life, my childhood. I loved being a kid. I loved being a kid. Bump the fact that it's complicated to be an adult, to exist as an adult. Your life does not stay the same. That's fucked up. The things that I enjoyed as a child are gone, my and life is not the same as it was. That house is not the same. The family is not the same as it was. I am yet grateful that the house on Cedar Hill exists. I am yet grateful for all of the experiences that I had in that house, in that neighborhood, in that backyard, in the front yard, riding down the street on our bikes, literally catching fireflies. I'm so eternally grateful to that house, to that time. And I think on some level I knew that I was going to write a song about loving where I was. I didn't know that I was going to write a song about my house, the one that I grew up in. Inside is about as close as I get to writing about living in St. Louis proper. I don't think I've done that yet. I instead opted to write about the place I grew up in and the place in which my childhood died. And ultimately, the memorial to that life, to that childhood, that will exist ad infinitum now that Sunphase 97 exists. So it needed to be final. I'll wrap on this and say I was obsessed with this imagery of my childhood home burning down. Not in a violent way, not in a I'm waiting on something bad to happen to the house. I thought about the need to let old things go and to let childish ways of being go, childish ways of thinking go. I wanted to watch it burn. I wanted to watch it blow away, because also you get some bad memories in that house. I'd like those gone too. So I was really obsessed with this imagery of like a burning house. And Asia did such a beautiful job with it. The silhouette, the texture of the fire itself. You know, I was always obsessed with the image of the burning house. That came mentally before we started making the album. To me, the lyrical content of Cedar Hill, I am standing at that burning house and watching it burn. And I'm crying ultimately because I'm sad to see it go. And I'm grateful that it existed. And I'm grateful for what it has done for me. And no shade, the house didn't burn down. The physical house still exists. We still go over there. The version of that shit that I held on to as a child, though, it's gone. That shit don't exist anymore. And ultimately, Cedar Hill is about accepting that life means that you need to let things go. And so it's a beautiful final piece. This was really dope. For real. I like running my mouth in this capacity, and it allows me to do some things which I really have never done publicly, which is talk my own shit here. My family has to listen to me run my fucking mouth constantly about how talented I think I am. But to be honest, I do take this music shit real seriously. I spent 2 years making this album. And I had to, A, prostrate myself to the music. B, give everything that I had. And I've learned that I'm not done. And I've learned that it feels good to be honest and direct. And I'm so excited to continue forth down this path now that I know what I'm capable of. It feels really, really nice to have this version of me. There will be more things on the horizon. I'm saying this for accountability purposes, and I'm also saying it because I genuinely mean it. A couple more music videos on the way whenever that happens. I want to do 1 or 2 more live performances. And then we can wrap on this chapter here. Outside of that, I am working on a project. It's not album 4, but it is a musical project that I am super excited to be working on, super excited to be reworking through in some interesting ways. And I'm excited to be able to share all of what's to come with you all. So keep a weather eye on the horizon. I'm going to be back whenever. Peace.